Hello and welcome to Catamount Community Connection, our weekly public affairs program here at Catamount Radio. I'm Brian Collamore, hosting the show each and every Sunday. Glad to have you aboard. And our show brought to you by the Rutland County Agricultural Society, which has brought you the Vermont State Fair at Rutland since 1846. We're already looking forward to the 179th Vermont State Fair at Rutland. And that'll be coming up next August, 2024. And again, on behalf of the Agricultural Society, thank you everyone for their great attendance for this year's fair. It really was spectacular, and I know a lot of people had a great time. So our program each and every week, as you well know by now, we talk with leaders from the business, professional, nonprofit, and political arenas. And the goal of the program to make our listeners aware of things that are going on, not just in Rutland County, but throughout the state. And we're very pleased, and I believe it is the first time we've been able to welcome in the Chief Executive Officer of the Bennington Rutland Opportunity Council, better known as BROC Community Action. And Tom Donahue is with us today. And Tom, welcome in, and thanks for coming in.
Well, thank you, Brian. I'm happy to be on your show this morning, and this is really great timing because we've got so much going on.
I bet you do. Whenever we have someone that's on for the first time, give them sort of an opportunity to do a little bio of themselves, maybe a minute or two about, people obviously are pretty aware of you from your time at the Chamber of Commerce and probably a bunch of other things that I'm not remembering right off the bat. But if you would, lifelong resident, where'd you go to school? How did you wind up where you are now?
Wait, did you say just a couple minutes?
You did.
Well, yeah, so I am proud to say my grandkids are actually sixth-generation Rutland residents, and that's pretty exciting to have. Yeah. The roots go deep here. I did start in kindergarten at Dana School, but then went over to Christ the King, and I had eight years there before I ended up going over to Rutland High School and graduating with many of the folks that I'm working with now, actually, which is kind of great, having many of my colleagues out there like Kevin Mullen and Dick Corsell and others that, graduated with me and are still active in the community and doing great things. So that's been fun. And then I made my home here, graduated from Linden State College, and since then, as you know, spent a little time at City Hall, about 6 years actually, where I was the community development director or economic development director with Jeff Wenberg, and worked directly with Jeff. Literally directly. We shared an office, more or less, with Gene Mattson in the middle. And then, we got a lot done during that time. I just happened to come across a magazine that was put out back then when we were all on the cover of it. It was a news magazine, black and white. Yeah. And it had said $100,000 sunrise for Rutland County. $100 million sunrise for Rutland County. And that time, we had so much economic development going that we literally had $100 million worth happening all at once, which included the new high school, included the mall and some downtown revitalization and so forth. So it was kind of exciting. I just literally happened to come across that this weekend and said, "Gosh, those were the good old days."
Oh yeah. So what years was that? The Great Rutland Mall or the Diamond Run Mall?
So it was the Great Rutland Mall. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah. So I'd been a city alderman. I was elected very young, and followed actually Kevin Mullen, who was the youngest member of the board at the time. And then got on the board and spent 3 terms before I was actually hired by the mayor to work full-time doing that kind of work. I loved being an alderman at the time. I loved doing the work in City Hall as the development director. So I spent kind of 11 years in that municipal experience when the Chamber of Commerce leadership position opened up, and I just said, you know what, that's got my name all over it. I can see, just the business development and tourism attraction. And then the fun of creating the networking opportunities for business people to flourish. So I literally spent 21 years there. Now, when I went, of course, I had no idea I'd be there that long. But it was one of those, I said, as long as there was something to get done, I'm going to stick with it. And at the point where I feel that's accomplished, I'll look to move on. And gosh, after all those years, there was always something new happening. We had the cyclical things like winter and August, things that would come around every year, and we'd do a great job with those. But the fun part was that, there was so many big projects. We did all of the Route 7 corridor improvements right through the city to all the way to Brandon. We did, millions and millions of dollars in improvements to the airport that that made it, the busiest airport in the state system in existence, in the state. Burlington is a federal airport, and then and then landing the airline, no pun intended, but getting an airline in there which provides daily passenger airline service, and then complementing that by getting all the years we worked on Amtrak, and then connecting that to Burlington so that we have a direct link to New York City. So, we're one of those communities that is able to claim that we have access. With the old saying, you can't get there from here. Well, in Rutland, you can get there from here by plane, train, and bus, right, is what I wanted to say. Yeah. So we actually have connection to New York City and Boston, bus, air, and rail, and rail to New York City daily. And that, what community in Vermont can actually say that?
And I know, of course, the next step for you was BROC, and we'll talk about that in a second. What airline was it? Colgan, maybe?
Yeah, so it was Colgan Air.
Okay.
Right, yeah. And they did a good job. They're a family airline and so forth. But I can remember having one of the meetings with them, Mary Colgan, and explaining to her that her brother Mike kept pulling the planes, so they would have some busier routes, and if they were down a plane, they'd pull Rutland's. And I said, that's the one reason that this isn't really, and again, I'll use another pun, but really taking off. And it was because they would always use our plane to fill in the other busier routes. You can't do that. No. If people book a flight, they expect for it to be there and to fly. And and Cape Air has accomplished that. So they have 3 round trips a day.
Yes, they do.
Yep. And they've accomplished that. Their planes are there. They're on time, and then that's given people the assurance that and the confidence in the airline. So it's been successful ever since. And I did support the change, and I supported Colgan Air, but I then subsequently supported Cape Air, realizing one key item, which is, when people say I don't want to fly on a small plane, I realized there actually wasn't any difference between a 19-passenger Colgan Air and a 9-passenger Cape Air. In people's minds, 19 and 9, there's might as well be some synonymous. It's a small plane, and they're either going to get on it or they're not. And once I got my brain wrapped around the fact that 9 will work for the same people that would fly a 19, I was willing to throw my support behind choosing that airline and getting the mayor at the time to support it, which was key. They needed that. The Department of Transportation, which is the federal DOT, wanted that municipal endorsement. And the mayor, Chris Louris at the time, who I just left a meeting with moments ago, was the guy who threw his weight behind it ultimately and made it happen. They've been here ever since, been very successful, and it's one of those, another bragging right for Rutland County.
Yeah. In fact, he worked there for a while as
TSA.
Yeah. Part of the people that we would check in. I remember him saying, "Hey, I know you. Come on through." And I use Cape Air myself probably 3 or 4 times a year to get down to Florida. The advantage to me is, and I did sign a letter of support along with the current mayor, Mike Dunches, the last time the contract came up. I think it comes up it was every 3, but I think we've made it a 4-year contract now. But whatever it is. And I think one of the advantages is you can park at the Rutland Airport free for a couple of weeks.
That's right.
You're also in the same terminal. I think it's Terminal C when you land at Logan.
That's right. Which,
if you're going to use JetBlue, which is where I wind up going, you don't have to take your shoes off and your belt again and go through security. Mm-hmm. You're already inside. So I just think and it's not expensive. It's probably about $70, $80 each way to go down. And to me, if you were going to drive it, or even with the bus, and there is a bus that comes back, but it only comes up as far as Hanover, I think, for over in New Hampshire.
That's
so you
right.
still have to get from Rutland to there.
Right.
But to me, you'd spend a lot more on gas, tolls, parking, everything else. So
exactly.
It's a great service, and happy to have them here. And hopefully they'll continue to run down to Boston 3 times a day and come back to Rutland 3 times a day.
Yeah.
So
all those things came up and kept me on the job for that long because it was so many. And the Vermont Gas Pipeline was the other big project that I worked on.
Oh, yeah.
And we got that as far as Middlebury. And it wasn't going to get to Rutland unless you got it to Middlebury. So we were 100% behind the project.
Yeah.
to get it to Middlebury so that we would be the next stop if it was at all possible. And, maybe someday it still might be because it'll help commercial development, and it's a competitive advantage if you have it versus if you don't have it.
Sure.
So that kept me on that job 21 years before the decision to try something completely new and get into, social services, if you will, but leave it from a chief executive standpoint. In other words, be able to use my leadership skills and my experience and know-how to apply to an organization that is doing some tremendous work in this county and really helping a lot of people. And what I call a two-pronged approach, which is you help them through crisis, and that's important, and especially to help our neighbors in need, a lot of which now are more and more we're seeing the elderly. But the second prong is that path forward. And so we have so many what I call path forward programs where we're literally helping people with budgeting skills, helping them credit repair, helping them get their first home, or literally job development and or business development. So our micro business development program, right now we've just started in the last year 11 new micro businesses. 11. That's when I was in Chamber World and I was on the board of Rutland Economic Development Corporation, Reddick at the time. If you could get 11 businesses going in here, you were doing all right. Yeah. So, our shop over there at BROC Community Action, we're actually doing that. We've got some great people. Kevin Canny is one of the people that's doing just a tremendous job there for us in that program. Working with microbusiness the definition is 5 employees, including mom and pop if it's a employer owned, if you will, total. So anything 5 employees or under is considered a micro business in the state of Vermont. And I found that that's really a sweet spot for business. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of micro businesses throughout the state that are actually flourishing. People that have a passion for something, or natural proclivity towards doing something well, have decided to make that into a business, not just a hobby, and so they pursued it. And some of them start part-time. And then can work into full-time, or some can actually continue it part-time and just as an additional helping to support the family and as part of your annual income in addition to your regular job. And it's one of those things that I think we really need to, as a state, continue to pursue because there is such an interest by people. And I got to tell you, the number of people that have come to us with some tremendous ideas and a real passion for what their vision is for this new business they want to start up, really makes it work. And and some of them are right here in downtown Rutland. We've been able to fill space in downtown Rutland with some of these businesses. But it is amazing to see Vermonters at their best, say, I've got an idea and I want to turn it into something beyond an idea. And then they get with our people, who help them business plan. They help them find leveraged funding. And I don't mean, free funding. I mean literally leveraging dollars from local lenders and so forth that get it off the ground and hopefully flourishing.
I don't know whether I like to think of them as the most industrious couple that I know, the Mannings.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, Walton Lynn, and they just opened up downtown. They probably have more than 5 employees though, but so they probably don't fit in that particular category.
Yeah, but small business for sure. And
my goodness! Yeah. I can't imagine when they sleep.
I don't think they do. I think they take shifts on the sleeping. But wow, what an amazing couple! Great people, salt of the earth. Wonderful people, running some great, really iconic local businesses. Yep. And the energy there. If I could bottle it, I'd grab some of that. Yeah. They're an amazing couple, and I'm very proud of the success that they've actually had. And Walt, of course, has been a salesman and sold me like 4 of our last 4 cars. So,
Yeah, he was just, I think, parted ways with Phil Alderman, but he was there for years and years and years. And then they have the bakery. Then they have
Jones Bakery.
Sugar and Spice.
Yeah.
And now they have a restaurant downtown.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing.
It is.
And that is the entrepreneurial spirit that I'm talking about.
Yeah. Great people. So you've been at BROC's how many years?
Well, 8 years and 8 months, and who's counting? But yeah, and it went by like a shot. I'm very pleased with what we've been able to do there because it is a big operation. Between the two counties, we have 60 employees, many of which work for our weatherization department. So, we're very excited about the fact that, we're sort of a multifaceted organization. We're taking what we're doing is, trying to move people beyond poverty, beyond being low income, have people be able to fend for themselves in many ways that are sometimes just stuck, that's all. It may not be, generational poverty, and sometimes it is.
Yeah.
But oftentimes it's people who just, need a little helping hand, and it's great to be able to be that for them and get them their lives moving forward. And BROC Community Action I'm blessed with a tremendous staff of people and some great leaders within each individual department. But speaking about the weatherization, for instance, a fellow named Theron Millay is our leader there. And they have work crews that go out every day into people's homes. And we literally do 100-plus homes per year. We're weatherizing it top to bottom. So instantly the people are enjoying a better quality of life in the home, but instantly saving money, summer and winter, because it keeps the home cooler in the summer, and the key in Vermont, warmer in the winter. But all that, the carbon dioxide that was going through the roof, which is the main source of leaks, if you will, or where heat rises, is also not impacting the environment any longer.
Yeah.
So there's sort of like nothing not to like about the program. The bar is set at a reasonable level, I think, is 80% of area median income. So if you qualify for the program, and in effect, you're making 80% of area median income or below. But we work closely with our friends at NeighborWorks, and what we do is, we refer back and forth so that if someone just barely doesn't qualify or is clearly above that qualifying line, we can refer to NeighborWorks so that their heat squad can work with them, and they can take out a low-interest loan to get the same work done and still save the same money, save the environment, and at the same time, improve your quality of life. You're living in your abode. That's pretty important, and vice versa. They'll determine that someone actually could qualify for our program and refer to us because they don't want to give them a loan if they can get it through this program, which is federally funded and through the LIHEAP dollars, but also state funded as well because they complement each other with the funding. Because one of the Vermont's major goals, not only for you folks in the legislature, but also in lockstep with the governor's administration, is to reduce environmental impacts in Vermont. And this is the number two contributor. The number one contributor is automobiles. Right. Number two is Vermont's old housing stock and all that fuel that we're burning going up through the roof and out into the environment. This is a way to curb that by having a very aggressive program, which is a model nationally, by the way. This isn't just a Vermont program. All the standards that our teams, our crews that apply every day when they go out into the home is this national standards. So, one of the things about these job skills they're learning too is, some of the young people want to travel. These are portable. They can learn these skills here and they can move to another part of the country and get gainfully employed. And it is gainful employment. We start our work crews at a little over $26 an hour. It's hard work, but it is some, respectable, what I call respectable hours, Monday through Friday. And it comes with a decent benefit package, but it is hard work. In the winter, it's cold. In the summer, real cold work sometimes. And in the summer, it can be extremely hot. You're being up in an attic in 90 degrees, and so forth. But rewarding work, many of the folks that work for us, men and women, by the way, actually feed back to us that they were attracted to the job not just because of the vocation itself, but because it's helping people in need. And that, gainful employment is what we always talked about. But these days, especially with the younger generation, and I appreciate this about them, they are looking also for meaningful employment. Yeah. They want to have an impact at the end of the day when they go home and say, wow, I helped people. And this job accomplishes both. So, we're very, very proud of that particular program that we implement. Yep. It's the largest program that we have at the organization. And that is one of our Path Forward programs to help people just, save money and actually have more money to feed and clothe and all the things that we all know what it looks like in a family budget that you have to do.
For those of you just joining us, we're talking to Tom Donahue, who is the CEO of BROC Community Action, former CEO at the Rutland, at the time it was called the Rutland Region Chamber of Commerce, and now it's CEDAR, which is the Chamber and Economic Development of the Rutland Region. And I'm sure we'll get to a discussion about your intersection with CEDAR and a whole bunch of other programs, I'm sure. But we do need to take our first break. So we will do that now and be back with Tom Donahue here on Catamount Community Connection in just a minute. We're back on Catamount Community Connection, our show brought to you each week by the Rutland County Agricultural Society, which has brought you the Vermont State Fair at Rutland since 1846. We're already looking forward to number 179 coming up next August. And our guest today on the program is Tom Donahue, who is the CEO at BROC Community Action. I think when most people think of BROC, I don't know because I haven't done a survey, but I'm guessing a lot of people think about food before they think about anything else that you do. Mm-hmm. And I know that's a very important part of what you do too, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. We're so proud of what we're able to do there because we have, in my last 8 years plus, we have significantly expanded the what we call BROC Community Food Shelf, significantly expanded. And one of the ways we were able to do that is to add in an indoor freezing capacity with freezer and refrigerator so that we're able to store so much more. But last year we gave out more pounds in food, which is nearly 500,000. But basically the fun fact was that actually weighed more than the Statue of Liberty.
Wow!
And I fact checked that.
That is amazing. Wow.
But it's so important to feed people. Our waiting room is full every day. You don't see lines necessarily outside our building. The reason is we bring them in. We have a nice reception area. We have Wi-Fi and the newspaper and so forth, and people can come in and stay warm while they're waiting to access the food shelf. But Amy Scott, who's our leader there, and just a tremendous job with her team of people. Some tremendous staff, some tremendous volunteers, which includes my own sister, is a retired school teacher and volunteers for us. Like, we've got some tremendous volunteers. But the point is, we've been able to provide people with what we call a balanced meal version of a food shelf, so that you're not just coming in, getting some canned goods literally out of a cupboard and, packing up a bag and leaving. No, you're actually coming in. We have grocery carts. You come in and literally kind of shop. We have, thanks to some tremendous community partners like the local supermarkets, Price Chopper and Hannaford, to name two, really, really support us every single day with product. And so even though we're fundraising, and that's so critical, we do buy through the Vermont Food Bank. That's critical. We have our fundraisers, Stuff-A-Bus, which is just amazing every year because it's right at the cusp of the holiday kickoff. Stuff-A-Bus is so significant particularly because of that timing, that we're able to provide that healthy eating. And that's really, really important, to provide healthy eating. We want people to live healthy, to feed their families healthy, and not just take what we happen to have that day and some canned goods. So people are getting produce, fresh produce. We source tens of thousands of dollars worth of fresh produce from local farmers. We find that to be a really important thing because, A, we can support local farmers, at the same time, B, that we're providing people with really healthy food because there's not a lot less preservatives in that food. Right. And we're really happy to be able to accomplish both. And so vegetables, dairy products, meat, and then, of course, the staples, the canned goods and things that you might expect, cereals and all those kind of things, very, very important. High-protein things like peanut butter and tuna fish and all those kind of things, protein's important in the meals. And so we're really happy to have accomplished that. And I give Amy Scott a lot of credit. She used to be a restaurateur. And so she really knows what she's talking about. And, every employee goes through programs called Safe Serve. So everything's handled properly and safely and distributed properly and safely But to think about going through 500,000 pounds in a year, that's a one day at a time, literally Monday through Friday. It's pretty intense. But on the other hand, it's very rewarding for me as I come and go, and I oftentimes will walk out just to say hello to people and just to kind of feel, because it's palpable, the need. If I'm going to do my job well and lead from the front, I need to be able to see and feel and understand the need and look people in the eye and know how important it is. So we're doing that now with the BROC Community Food Shelf, and it is a significant effort that we put into it. We spend over $500,000, and that's not counting what we gather for free. That's just what's spent there. And it is also a way for people to enter the building, because, we don't have metal detectors and all those kinds of things to get in. We don't have security. I'm the security, I suppose, at the end of the day. But the idea that, people are comfortable coming to us. We're considered that trusted community partner. And in doing so, when they come in, then we can find out what else might have you stuck. Why are you here for food? What's got you short? Yep. And there might be areas that we can help them with that, whether that's budget counseling or literally that might be that they're just in a situation with their landlord or whatever that isn't sustainable for them. And what we try to do is create what we call a sustainable path forward. It isn't just about the path forward. You can set people up. You can get people in housing. Will they be able to stay there? Not if you don't do it well. You got to create a sustainable scenario for them to succeed and move their lives forward. And a lot of scenarios, trying to get people housed and things like that are not sustainable. It's not realistic. So you put them in a situation where they're likely to fail. And that's not what we do. So getting them to come to the food shelf, which is pretty compelling in itself, is a great way for them to come in and see, what else can you help me with that'll help really change my situation so that I can get out of this situation. And, ultimately putting ourselves out of business would be the real vision. Visions are supposed to be sort of grandiose and a little far-reaching.
How about March of Dimes? Used to, polio, and then and now what do we do?
Eradicate polio, yeah, exactly. And that would be eradicating poverty, but unfortunately probably never going to happen, honestly. Yeah. Poverty is something that is going to exist in America and exists in Vermont. But getting people out of that, and if we do, and if we could change that potentially generationally, then we've really accomplished something, because generational poverty is real. And the schools will tell you. We work very closely with the schools. And I really appreciate our partnership and our relationship with the schools, because the teachers and administrators in the schools, as an example, the support staff, know the families that are in need. They know the kids that need help. And they're able to reach out to us for that help. And we're able to sort of, case by case, dive in to support that need. But we may not know about it, but thanks to the schools, we do. And then one other thing I want to mention, which is just a bit of a model, I think, for us, is we kind of nicknamed it some time ago the Bridging the Gap Summer Meal Program. But it was known for a long time that kids would eat because they were in school. Yeah. What happens when school's out?
Summer, yeah.
And summer rolls around. So we have this wonderful partnership with Rutland City Public Schools, for example, where they actually create the meals through a USDA program and bring them to us every day. We distributed over 4,000 meals last summer to school kids in need, and they're able to come in and get their meal and then leave. So they don't have to eat it there. It's bagged and ready to go. A little breakfast and a lunch, and they can get it for every child in the family. And that has been a game changer, because now we know that those kids aren't going without in the summer because school's out. But we bridge that gap, that summertime meal gap, and provide for them. And thank goodness for the partnership with the schools, because we don't have the capacity to pull that off probably on our own, but in partnership. And so one of the things when I first took the job, and I got, never forget, we did a big annual meeting like the Chamber of Commerce, and I said, let's do the ballroom kind of thing and get everybody there. And they said, well, who are you going to have for a keynote speaker? And I said, well, I know Pat Leahy pretty well. Let me reach out. Well, he came and was our keynote speaker, and it was our first one. And since then, we've had some wonderful keynote speakers like the governor and others. But my point about that is that when I stood up there to give my try to be brief spiel, I said collaboration, and I meant it, and I've lived it since I came on this job. We somehow previously, and it might have worked previously, so not to cast aspersions to previous management, but it was kind of things were done in a silo. And that model does not work today. You've got to be able to collaborate and have and partnerships in the community, other organizations. It isn't about duplicating services. Believe me, there's not enough of us to go around. But it's about complementing each other's services, dovetailing with what's out there, and building those resources because you're partnering. Yeah. And I started a hashtag We're Better Together, because it really does, it is game-changing. And I was so proud we got the Community Champion Award from New Story Center. And Evelyn Lanning and her tremendous team over there of people, wow, what great work they do. To get that award, and then we got when CSJ was around, we got the Provider of the Year award and some things like that. It wasn't about the award for me as much as it was the recognition that we were, in fact, collaborating. We were partnering and doing it successfully. And those resources, talk about being good stewards of the taxpayer dollar. You want efficiencies, you want effectiveness, and you want to stretch those resources as far as you can, not just look at, a pool of funding and how fast can I spend it. It's about, hey, how can I best spend it? And collaborating and tying resources together is that way. And, one of the other ones I'm proud of that we have at the building is the Red Cross. We are very close partners with the Red Cross. You'll see outside of our building their emergency trailers. They now have a truck that they parked there because they needed a place to deploy from when they didn't have their operation on Strong's Avenue any longer. So we store all their cots and blankets and the comfort packs, they call them, by the thousands are stored in our building. And their trailers are there so that if there's an emergency, they can come and hook up and go. And partnerships like that, we're very, very proud of. But that is the idea. They no longer had a building, but they still needed space. We provided that space. So now if there's an emergency where the Red Cross needs to respond, they deploy from BROC Community Action.
We're talking to Tom Donahue, the chief, what do they used to say, cooker and bottle washer, whatever, the CEO at BROC Community Action here on Catamount Community Connection. And I have to tell you, I have leaned on you in the past more than once for getting help for someone that called me and said, hey, could you find out something about this or that? And you've always come through for me. So I do appreciate that. And it's always nice to know that I can talk to somebody that understands what people's needs might be and then where to find the help that they need. So so we talked about food. We've talked about the weatherization programs. You mentioned LIHEAP, which, again, for people that aren't familiar with the acronyms, is the Low Income Heating Assistance Program that comes from the federal government and is used to help pay for people's heating bills. I guess in the old days, it was pretty much just number 2 heating oil from wherever you get it,
right?
And propane, because I want to mention that source as well. Yep. Now we're talking about electricity and a lot of other different ways to keep people warm. But that has a cap to it. There's only so much federal money available. And so the weatherization obviously is married to that in the sense that if you can get a nice tight house developed, you're going to spend less on fuel, and that's always a good thing. What are some of the other things that maybe people aren't aware of that BROC does for our community? Yeah,
well, if you don't mind, I do want to spend one moment on that emergency heating program, because that is so significant. As Vermont's demographic ages, and Rutland County is one of, if not the oldest demographic in the state, we want to make sure that our elderly residents particularly know that programs like this are available to them and that they can reach out to us, because Vermont has long, cold winters. It may not be as much snow as it used to be when I was a kid here, but the cold is, consistent. And that can be life-threatening, potentially. So we want to make sure, and it may not be a listener in need. It may be somebody they know from church. It may be somebody they know from work. or just a neighbor to refer to us, because we are the only ones designated with this state program. BROC Community Action does this exclusively for the state of Vermont, and it's called the Crisis Fuel Program. Mm-hmm. And this year we have in total a little bit more than last year to distribute. It's $260,000 that will be in actual fuel dollars. And your point is aptly put. It is not just about number 2 fuel oil anymore. It does go with the main heating source for the home. So in Vermont, that could be wood, and you could be buying cords of wood versus a tank of fuel, as well as pellets and, of course, kerosene. And then you mentioned the fuel oil and propane, too. And thank God this year the prices are not too bad. The rack price today was $3.12 per gallon. I remember when we were panicked when it was, pushing, it could hit $6. Well, your money goes half as far. $260,000 turns into $130,000 when it's twice the price. So we were very, very concerned. But thank goodness for a couple of other programs. Green Mountain Power has one that's a contributing program with their customers that is called Warmth, all capital letters. And then a third one, of course, is the one we just finished with the Casella family.
Wheels for Warmth.
Led by, the governor's idea of turning tire sales into money that can go to an emergency heat fund. That gives us, and this year it will be a record set for that program, which we believe is in the area of $29,000. But what that helps us do is color outside the lines, as I like to call it, which means if you don't qualify for the state program, we can turn to one of the other programs to say, let's see if we can help you there. Because, we're particularly concerned in January and February in Vermont. We don't want people literally freezing, pipes bursting, all those kinds of things. So we have this wonderful crisis fuel program that we're in charge of. But it doesn't sound, that sounds like a lot of money, but boy, last year we literally didn't quite make it to the end of the program. So the program has a beginning and an ending, and we didn't quite make it. We were short because it's one of those things that is a great need. So when you mention what else do we do, I want to point out one of the reasons that we're doing some of these things and we're suddenly in demand more than we ever have been before for food, for fuel, for electric needs is because of rent costs. Rent has never been higher in my lifetime than it is today. And this was a phenomenon that happened during the pandemic and has continued since, maybe even gotten a little worse, so that now when you used to pay $800 or $900 for rent, you're now paying $1,400 to $1,600 a month for rent. In effect, basically, we're sort of supplanting that with support through other programs. So if you had to take the money that was in your fuel budget or your food budget and now pay the landlord, you no longer have the ability to go to the grocery store or to, reach out to your fuel dealer. And so it seems like the demand on our programs might be in direct relation to the extremely high rents that are out there right now. And it's concerning because, how do people come up with that kind of money to live and keep a roof over their house?
Especially fixed income folks.
Especially fixed income folks. And as a legislator, I'll tell you, of course, I'm still eyeballing the fact that Vermont is one of only 9 states in the whole country that still taxes Social Security. And we should probably, and I know that I think you're the one that sponsored bills historically to try to eliminate that. But I think the whole legislature needs to get behind that one and get with the majority of the country that does no longer taxes that limited income.
There will be a bill, I promise, that will, first of all, take care of the veterans, because that bill I've done every single term since I've been there, which will exempt all of the military pensions from state income tax. Mm-hmm. But then above and beyond that, I'd like to take a look at the Social Security situation and remove the state tax on that as well. Can't do anything about the federal tax on it, but we can certainly work to get people to basically keep more money of their own in their pocket, and
exactly
we'll see how that goes.
Well, you said the key words there, the magic words: limited income.
Yeah.
So it's already limited enough, and then you take out of that taxes, and it just makes it really hard for people as costs continue to increase out there for services and goods, and they're not coming down. And sometimes I think it's kind of interesting to see package sizes shrinking so that it may look like the price didn't go up quite as much, but now you're getting less ounces for your dollar. And at the end of the day, it's the people that are suffering. It's the tight family budgets, individual budgets are getting tighter and tighter. And this year, the Social Security, I guess the cost of living increase is going to be just 2.5%. But that doesn't reflect what the increases people have experienced post-COVID. We're seeing more need post-COVID than we did throughout. And I do want to give a little bit of credit to our organization and my staff particularly, who really knocked it out of the park during 3+ years of COVID restrictions and guidelines and things that we followed. But I want to tell you that we made a conscious decision that we were going to be like firemen running into the burning building when everybody else was running out. We were not going to shy away from the pandemic. We were not going to shy away from the virus. We were an essential service, and we were going to stand our ground and provide that service throughout the entire pandemic and do it safely. So I was kind of in charge of the protocol, and I enforced it, and we didn't mandate anything, but we had some pretty strong guidelines that so proud of our staff that adopted and paid attention to. And we only had literally one, as they classify it, one outbreak in the entire period of time. And all that time, we provided our services, every service, including literally front-facing staff, which we moved the food shelf outdoors. We rented a couple, I call them circus tents.
Remember that.
Because they had the pitch there in the middle and, you're everything but the side shows there, and brought the food out to people every day, and in and out. It was a tough slug, but we did it. And I say we, my staff primarily, they're just good, hardworking people, smart people, and they're committed people. And so they managed to pull that off. And then much more of the other staff that are providing these services were able to do it remotely because we were required to, in effect, but still not fold the tent on these programs and say, we'll come back to this, or lay people off. We did not lay anybody off. We kept everybody gainfully employed throughout the pandemic and provided those services 100%. We didn't retreat from anything. With the exception of we weren't going in people's homes weatherizing. People didn't want you in their homes at that point, and I got it. But we were able to use that time to train employees, to all the types of training that they could muster, where they were able to spend every day training and learning more and being ready. So when we were relieved of that pandemic, what the president declared, the declaration, that we were able to just go right back to work and be right back on the job. And literally, it was exciting just to welcome staff back. We're a front-facing group, so we don't have people working from home. It's not realistic. This is the kind of place where you need to be able to STP, they call it, see the people. Yeah. And that's us. So we're just so proud of that. And I really am proud of what we did during the pandemic. I always felt that organizations that stepped up during the pandemic are the ones that are going to be remembered long after, not that retreated.
We're talking to Tom Donahue, the CEO at BROC Community Action. We need to take our second break on Catamount Community Connection. We'll be back with Tom in just a minute. We are back on Catamount Community Connection with Tom Donahue from the BROC Community Action Group. I'm Brian Collamore, and this is your weekly 1-hour public affairs program here at Catamount Radio, brought to you again by the Rutland County Agricultural Society, which has brought you the Vermont State Fair at Rutland since 1846. So before we go on, and I wanted to mention some of the partners that you have developed relationships with, Tom, through all your 8 years at BROC. I know we do some events here with Catamount Radio that's involved, et cetera, et cetera. But before we get there, another form of media, PEG TV, and you have certainly a role there. And it was my pleasure to be part of your election coverage, I could say now last month, because we're in December. So when we did the election on November 5th, I think it was, you provided, again, I think the only coverage that people could get in Rutland County. Years ago, and I was part of it back then. I wasn't in office, but we used to have Ted Pendleton and those guys, and Tim Philbin at one point would do election coverage, and we'd all come in that night, the salespeople and everything else, and we'd run around and try to get the city clerks and town clerks to give us the results from their area, and we'd have some pizza and have a good time. Well, we don't do that anymore in radio. It's a whole different world, many more challenges than we ever had back then. But you are like the face of election coverage, I think, for a lot of people in the county. And PEG TV puts you on every year, and you do a great job. Hard to walk middle ground, I know sometimes. I mean, I'm a politician, so I know how difficult it is to find middle ground. But you do a great job with that. And just my compliments to you. I think you're awesome.
Well, thank you. Really, I really do appreciate you saying that, because it is all volunteer, of course. But I am a big believer in PEG TV. It stands, of course, for Public Education and Government, PEG.
Yep.
3 stations, television, and it is a tremendous community resource. And Tom Leopold and his team over there at PEG TV do a wonderful job of covering so much when you think about it. All the games and all the select board meetings and school board meetings, and then, the live election night coverage, aldermanic debates, all those kind of things. That's just such a unique and tremendous resource that, the community would be such a void not to have. And, when you talk about people not being able to sometimes get out, you don't maybe have the ability to get out. The fact that you can tune in really connects our community together and our citizens together, because they are able to participate in that way and be knowledgeable about different topics affecting them at home or in their state or city budgets or just in their schools, and whether it's a school board meeting or literally watching your kids, your grandkids, your friends and relatives on the field. Wow, when you think about the whole thing, how important that is. And I want to compliment you, because I'm aware, and you didn't ask me to say this, but I'm going to, that you have supported them in the legislature, because there are concerns about whether or not community access in Vermont will be able to remain, and it is such a critical resource for communicating what goes on in our local towns, our own backyards. That I appreciate the fact that you, when I reached out to you on behalf of PEG TV, were one of the people that stood up and said, absolutely, I want to support community access television in Vermont. Yeah.
Unfortunately, as life changes and fewer people get their stuff from cable, where we'd have that charge for on our bill every month, and I don't know, $5-6, that went to PEG TV. But as fewer subscriptions there are, obviously there's a gap, or there's a hole, a funding hole there. So we have to look out for our partners at PEG TV, because they do. Nobody else can do what they do. It just isn't. No. It isn't in the cards.
It's special.
Yeah.
It
really
and there's
is.
no commercials, and that's what makes it different.
Yep.
And we have a program on there called BROC Talk, and we get on there, and I have Vicki Loomis hosts one that's called BROC Talk to talk about anything going on in the community, like Stuff a Bus, like Wheels for Warmth, and then I do one called BROC Talk Program Spotlight. What I do with that one, which makes it a little different, is I actually bring in one of our department heads and says, tell us about your program.
Excellent idea.
So that people know what the program is and how to access it, which is really, we don't want to have a good program and not tell people how to access it.
So I want to read from a card that I found here, because, again, I think a lot of people think of BROC and they think of food, or we talked about the weatherization. How about fuel assistance, electric assistance, housing assistance, tax return preparation, credit repair, workshops? This is a big one for me. We don't have, I don't think, at least in our school system anymore, or maybe we never did, a budgeting class or a class where someone will teach kids how to make a budget, how to keep a budget, and how to manage their checkbooks. I mean, it seems simple, but a lot of people don't have those skills. 3 Squares Vermont's another one, and so you do a whole ton of things. I don't know, we're going to run out of time before we could talk about every one of those, but my point was that it isn't just food and it isn't just weatherization, although those may be kind of the public face of BROC, but there's a lot of other stuff going on.
Yeah, and one of those is that we started this Warming Others Winter Clothing Drive initiative, we call it actually, because it's more of a initiative than just a one and done. We actually started in the fall, late fall, as soon as it turns crisp, we load up the room and get going. We run it right through the spring because people, you never know when they're going to need hats, gloves, coats, scarves, and the like. And we do supply a lot of families for their kids. Their kids just don't have a warm coat. So we have that program. And it is a great time of the year when we do that, along with, I want to mention a couple of partners, the Rotary, where they provide vouchers for Christmas trees. We have the toy, what we call Toys Under the Tree, where we actually provide Christmas presents. But talking about partnerships and relationships like Rotary and so forth, one of them is with WSYB and the Christmas Fund. Yep. And we are one of your referring partners, and it's so important to the families that need us. They come to us and they provide the documentation that we require for them to get on your list, if you will. And this year we have provided 103, the names of 103 families in this region, just through our organization alone. And WSYB Christmas Fund is just gold, and it's so important. And I know how many decades that you've put your heart and soul into that program to really make sure that local families in need have a Christmas. It's so significant, and we really, really appreciate it at BROC Community Action.
Well, it's been my pleasure. It's 52 or, if you will, 54 years old, depending on how you sort of define it. The first year was just an in-station collection, which was occasioned by the reading of a letter to Santa on the air. And then it became actually incorporated a little bit a couple years later. So we are a 501c3 registered with the Secretary of State, and people can make tax-deductible contributions. But it is something that's really special. Not one dime literally goes out from what people give us. It all goes back, 100% of that, to people. And it has to be in Rutland County. You have to live in Rutland County to take advantage of it. We don't go outside of that. But we try our best to reach to as many people as we can, literally hundreds of families every year. I did a quick math thing back when, and we were over $60,000 that we collected last year. But if you take the 50 years and just average it, we're over $2 million that's gone back into the community. Wow. And I'd like to remember what David Walk told me one time. He's told me a lot of good things and given me good advice over the years. For instance, when you get election, he said, you get a report card every 2 years, and if people aren't happy with what you're doing, you're gone, and somebody else takes your spot. But in terms of the Christmas Fund, he said, it's Rutland's gift to itself. And if you think about it, it really is.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's right. We take care of our neighbors in need. Yeah. In Rutland County, we're just so blessed to have people who care about their neighbors. We literally take care of ourselves. Yep. We take care of our neighbors in need. We're known for that. It's one of the things that I love about growing up here and raising a family here and now grandkids. It's because this is a community that cares, no question.
Well, we have about 3-4 minutes left. I know you don't like stop signs at the end of conversations. It's hard. It's hard to find a way to stop this, but we have a few minutes left. If there's anything else you want to make people aware of.
Yeah, two things. So I'll keep an eye on the time. One is that the hotel situation is on people's minds, and we have 2 staff people that we call them field navigators, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that real quick, because it's so important that people know that there is an outreach going on. There are other organizations doing it too, but we have 2 people dedicated to that who are helping people one family at a time to get their situation repaired in some way to get them into some sustainable housing and also get them the things that they're desperately in need of in the process. I will say, politics aside, I am not a fan of the program right now because these living conditions that these have turned into, to me, is not palatable. I'm not comfortable with it personally. So I am not a fan of the program as it exists today. It definitely needs to change. We need to be expanding shelter space and have more congregate shelter and more wraparound services, and the hotels are not the answer any longer. It was a good fallback position during the pandemic to keep people from sharing the virus, basically, and contracting the virus and potentially dying from it. But those days were over, and we really need to move on from that program. But in the meantime, we do have staff that are working with people every single day, literally right now as we speak. Last thing, BROC.org. Go to our website, www, of course. You don't even have to type that anymore, I don't think. It's a thing of the past. Just BROC, BROC.org. To learn more about these programs that I'm talking about, we have a tremendous website. We keep it updated every day.
Are you always looking for volunteers, too?
Well, not so much volunteers. Quite frankly, we're always looking for donations.
Okay.
We're like a home budget. It is oftentimes too much month at the end of the money. And we have some tremendous programs, and we're doing tremendous work. But the overhead, our costs have all gone up, too, since the pandemic. And it's been very difficult to make ends meet, to sustain these programs, to meet the need, to help the people. So we really are looking for donations. You can mail them to 45 Union Street. You can actually do it from BROC.org. And you can even designate the program. If you want to keep somebody warm, put that on there, and that's where it goes. Or you can make it general, and we'll find the highest need for it. But that would be the big message. It's not volunteers as much as it is funding, honestly, and unfortunately. But I'm glad that we're there doing it. And the other thing I just ask people to do, if you're on social media, look us up on Facebook, like our page. You see things going through there all the time, like last week we did, and every month we do talking about partnerships. Vermont Department of Health comes in and does free vaccination clinics. We're glad to have those kind of partnerships and services provided at our location, on location, to free of charge to people, especially now when you want to get the flu shot and don't have insurance, let's say. Quickly, we're on Instagram, we're on X, we're on YouTube, we're on PEG TV. And so I encourage people to go to our website or go to any of our social medias and keep an eye on what we're doing, because all the other programs that you mentioned, beyond the list of staples programs, are always being promoted on our social media and our website.
Okay. Rutland born and bred, Tom Donahue, former Rutland City Alderman, former CEO at the time, Rutland Region Chamber of Commerce, and now the CEO at BROC Community Action. It's been a pleasure having you on, Tom. I won't let a year go by. I promise I'll have you back at some point and check in and see how things are going. And thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Brian. You're one of Rutland's greatest assets.
Oh, thank you. I certainly, I'm not sure about that myself, but thank you very much. I appreciate it. We will see all of you next Sunday here on Catamount Community Connection.